the November 28th Parks and Recreation meeting. If we start, please, with a roll call.
Chair Greenfield,
Here.
Vice Chair Brown,
Here.
Commissioner Cribbs,
Here.
Commissioner Freeman,
Here.
Commissioner Kleinhaus,
Here.
Commissioner Oche,
Here, please.
Commissioner Way.
Here.
Chair, that's 7 present.
Thank you. If there are any members of the public that would like to speak to an item that's not on the agenda this evening, please raise your hand or fill out a speaker card. And since there are no public comments this evening, we'll move on to the agenda changes, additions, and deletions. Anything we want to change this evening? Then we will proceed with the agenda as set. And first up then is the department report, please.
Thank you, Javad. I'm Darren Anderson with Community Services Department. Good evening. Next slide. Let me start off with the recruitment update. We're in the final stages of filling our 3 vacant open space technician positions. In fact, they've been filled since I updated this. So we've got them on, and for first in a long while, open space is fully staffed, which we're really excited about. We're in the final stages of our CSD Assistant Director of Arts and Sciences recruitment, and we've started recruitment for the CSD Assistant Director of Open Space, Parks and Golf, my position. Next slide. Just a reminder about the Enjoy catalog. The resident registration opens 8:30 on December 7th, and the non-residents the following week, December 14th at 8:30. Next slide. The tree holiday lighting program. You can gather your friends and family and come enjoy live music, bell ringers, carols, winter treats for the City of Palo Alto's tree lighting in Lytton Plaza. And that's on Friday, December 1st from 5:30 p.m. to 7 p.m. Also have the holiday toy drive. If you'd like to provide for families in need, you can drop off your new unwrapped toys, books, and other gifts to any of the Palo Alto fire stations, libraries, or community centers. And all donations will go to our local youth in need this holiday season. Next slide. An update about grassroots ecology. They have a volunteer work day at Pearson Rastradero Preserve. This is December 9th, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. They'll be meeting in the Rastradero Preserve parking lot. They also have their Youth Steward program for the winter 2024 session. The priority deadline is Sunday, December 10th, 2023 at noon, at 11:59 p.m. And this is for middle school, high school, and community college after-school youth stewards. And they can visit the Grassroots Ecology webpage for more information on that one. Next slide. The environmental volunteers have an upcoming free family nature walk at Foothills Nature Preserve. This is December 16th and 23rd. Both of those events are 11 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. And again, you can find more details on their website. They would do request that you sign up in advance if possible, though they will take walk-ins. And this is a event for all ages. Next slide. Project updates, our skate park. The consultant who's doing the parking analysis anticipates they'll complete it and send us their findings by November 30th. The Johnson Park basketball court was resurfaced 2 weeks ago. And the Bulware Park Public Art Project, this is a virtual workshop on Thursday, November 30th at 6 p.m. And you can see the updated artwork design and contribute your input to the text that will be incorporated on the artwork itself, reflecting the character and aspirations of the Ventura neighborhood. Next slide. This is our CIP updates. I only have a few. Next slide. And the first is El Camino Park. This is the synthetic turf replacement project. That's estimated to start construction on March 2024, and that'll be a 3-month duration project. And then the Mayfield Soccer Complex will have their synthetic turf fields replaced starting in July 2024, likewise a 3-month project. Next slide. And an update on the Rinconada pool, the family changing room and restroom. The construction estimate is to start late summer 2024 and be completed by early 2025. Next slide. So the nature notes, our new tradition here. This one is on the western fence lizard, commonly known as the blue belly lizard because the adults typically have a blue abdomen. The adults range between 5 to 8 inches long, and this particular lizard occupies a variety of different habitats that can be found in all our open space preserves. And this is probably the most common reptile that we've got and you will see. They're diurnal, meaning they're active during the day, and they're commonly seen basking on rocks and fence posts and other areas within the preserve. Interestingly, they can change color from light gray to nearly black for the purposes of thermoregulation while basking in the sun. And they do go through a period of brumation during the colder period, winter, which is really similar to hibernation. Basically, they'll just go dormant, only waking up to drink water, but they can go months without food during those cold seasons. And the question I probably get most commonly when I used to be a ranger was, why do they do push-ups? And the answer is western fence lizards are territorial, especially during the spring mating season. So around that time, you can see the males do what looks like push-ups. And basically, it's a display that the lizards use to try to attract females. Next slide. Perhaps the most interesting thing that I find with the western fence lizard is their association with Lyme disease. And it's a positive one in that studies have shown that where we've got cases of Lyme disease, they're less common in areas where we have this type of lizard. And the reason is when ticks carrying the Lyme disease feed on this lizard's blood, which they commonly do, especially when they bite them around the ears, which you can kind of see in that photo, a protein in that lizard's blood kills the bacterium inside the tick that causes Lyme disease. And the infection inside the gut, the tick's gut, is cleared, and that tick will no longer carry Lyme disease. So in a way, the western fence lizards are making it safer in terms of Lyme disease for all of us in our preserves. I encourage you to keep an eye out for this beautiful lizard in all of our preserves. You can find them. And Chair, that concludes the department report.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from staff, from the commissioners? Thank you for the report, and I know we, sorry.
Thank you for the nice little description of the western fence lizards. I think we should bring them to all our parks, not only our nature preserves. They can be very common in the city. And the fact that people don't see them in regular parks probably means that we over manicure and we could find areas. So I'm just commenting on that. I'm not asking you to do anything, especially not on your last day at this job. But I think it's important to recognize they could be anywhere. There, I find them in my yard.
Yeah.
You know. Thank you.
Yeah, great point. Thank you.
Thank you for the lizard presentation. I'm sure we all enjoyed that the most. Would you like to continue?
Thank you, sir. So this is my last Parks and Recreation Commission meeting. I'll be retiring from the city in 2 days. And the chair and vice chair asked if I'd share a few highlights from my time with the city, some of the projects I've been involved with. Very, very kind and thoughtful and generous of you to say that and to give me a chance to say goodbye to my city, to my friends and family out here, my city team. Really care a lot about these people, and I just care a lot about the city. So I'm grateful for this opportunity. Could you get the next slide, Javon? So this is a campfire program at Foothills Nature Preserve in 1999 when I started. And it was my first month of working with the city. And leading nature programs like this was probably one of my favorite jobs. I just loved it. Next slide. And of all my nature programs I got to lead, I think canoe programs were my favorite. And of those, the full moon nighttime canoe programs were my ultimate favorite. I didn't get to do a lot of those because obviously it's only every full moon, but those were really special way of sharing open space experience, seeing it in a different way and sharing that with our community. Next slide. Helping wildlife was another part of why people get into the ranger field, because we love it. We love wildlife. We want to save them. We want to help them whenever we can. This is a photo of a ranger I worked with, Joe Colley, Joe and I are rescuing an injured American pelican out of the Baylands. And of course, we all hate seeing any wildlife get injured, but getting a chance to help this animal is especially memorable. That bird's wingspan is 9 feet wide. It's amazing. Next slide. This is a photo of the parks team saving some fish that were stranded in the pond. We got to come and try to fish them out and save them, get them to water. Next slide. This is a photo of western sandpiper and a snowy egret chick that we rescued out of the Baylands. Fortunately, that happened a lot. There was a heronry around the Baylands Ranger Station, and so the chicks would fall quite often, and we would take them to wildlife rescue. So I've got a lot of good memories of helping those birds. Next slide. So this is an interesting project. As part of the City Management Academy, it was a leadership academy that we participated in. They had a project. And so I pitched to the team, that's me pitching the project on the right there, saying, hey, we've got this little section of the Baylands out by the sailing station. We could put in some nest boxes for burrowing owls. And they got into it. I had all 35 of them working with me for about a month or two. And you could see the nest boxes in the middle there. So we were real proud to try to help our burrowing owls have more habitat. Next slide. So this is a different way of helping wildlife. When I first came to the city, Palo Alto was one of the few places that I've worked at that allowed feeding of wildlife. It was sort of an anomaly. And at the time, my boss had said, well, there's a long tradition. You know, grandparents have bringing their kids to feed for over 50 years, especially at the Baylands Duck Pond. And I said, gosh, every place else I've worked, it's a really big no-no because of all the negative impacts and harm it causes. So I said, well, it's going to be hard to change, but you could start with an educational campaign. So this was a brochure we developed, and I would go out there with our pet snake, and that sort of win people over as I gave them the bad news that we really didn't want them to feed the wildlife. Years later, after a very lengthy educational campaign, we passed a municipal code and prohibited feeding of wildlife in our preserves and parks. Next slide. Helping people is the other one that rangers just love to do at all times. And this was an interesting one. This was a canoe program, not one of mine, that ran into a little trouble with strong winds, and it blew them against the far side of the marsh, and they could not get back to the dock. And as the tide pulled out, they began panicking, and a couple people jumped in the mud and got stuck. You can see the child on the right is chest deep into the mud, and we spent hours getting them out. Unfortunately, it took so long, the tide started rising again, and there was this concern that maybe we wouldn't get them out in time. So this one was a great success story. We got all 22 kids out, including that boy there who's stuck in the mud. Next slide. This was an interesting one, another chance to help people. In this case, the people driving this car put it in the wrong gear. It was put it instead of reverse, they put it in drive, jumped over the parking lot and floated right into the marsh. And it drifted until it hit a low spot or a high spot of mud, but there was a rising tide. And the two people in the car couldn't swim. One of them was pregnant. And so we raced and got the canoe that you could see on the left. And if you go to the next slide, we paddled right up and helped pull them out. And I remember the woman I'm pulling out right now, I was telling her, be really careful. We got to get right in the center of the canoe. She said, yeah, no problem. And she sat right on the edge. And we were just centimeters from tipping that canoe. It was just a miracle we got them both out without going for a swim. That was a real fortunate one. Next slide. This is a photo of a Save the Bay staff person and me at the nursery that we built at the Baylands. And the backstory is when I first started at the Baylands, I was leading my own volunteer program. So I gather together volunteers and buy native plants and work them. And I was a taskmaster. I was terrible. I would work them so hard they never wanted to come back. And I went to a Save the Bay program and I thought, oh, this is how you do it. These guys are pros. They made it so fun and so entertaining and so educational that every single one of the people that participate in those programs love it and want to come back. And I asked them, would you like to co-lead one in my preserve where I work? And they agreed. And that was 23 years ago. We formed a partnership that's lasted all these years. It resulted in building a nursery and a shade structure and thousands of opportunities for our community to come to volunteer and learn about the preserve and the restoration process. They're just the greatest organization, and we're so lucky to have them. One of the best, just wonderful. Next slide. This is one of their programs that we led together, and this one was kind of an interesting story. It was a bunch of sixth graders that came to preserve. And in the beginning, they were a little jaded, not too interested in it. Like, why do we have to be here? And of course, Save the Bay, working their magic, won them over. And at the end of the day, it was a hot day and they'd been working hard, and I passed out waters to each one. And several of them come up to me at the end and say, can we give our water to the plants? And they wanted to pour their drinking water out to the plants they just planted. And I thought, that is the magic of these kind of programs. You can turn participants into long-term stewards, people who are going to love that land and care for it. Next slide. This was a controlled burn that we did, partnership with CSD and the fire department and Office of Emergency Services. It was just some good teamwork, working to try to introduce controlled burns into our open space. Next slide. So maintaining our parks, next slide. Maintaining our preserves is just some of my favorite things. This photo is a fairly recent one, and a lot of the folks that are in the shot are right behind me, my colleagues on the open space team. This is the nighttime job where we came in to fix some of the supports on the Baylands Boardwalk that had been getting preyed upon by some shipworms. And so we came out in the middle of the night, this intrepid crew, who's just such a hardworking, dedicated team, and we all just spent hours and hours out in the mud sloshing about, having the time of my life. I loved it, loved every minute of it, and largely thanks to them. Next slide. We also did, and this is sort of a big kudos to the commission, because boy, did we do a lot of renovations and park improvement projects, and it couldn't happen without this wonderful commission and working with them to get these things approved, to include the community, to develop the plans. That's all commission driven. And most of these park renovations, it's El Camino Park on the right and Scott Park on, El Camino on the left, Scott Park on the right. I'm usually the guy holding the ribbon in the background. And then the commissioners come in and cut the ribbon, which is just awesome. And I just want to thank the commission for all those kind of projects. There were so many. Next slide. I think here's a couple more. This is on the left when we turned the majority of Bixby Park, the remaining 2/3 of it, into parkland. It was had been landfill, and we did the conversion there. And on the right, the 7.7 acres of foothills, that's the ribbon cutting. One of our former chairs of this commission has got the mic. Just another great event where we make open space accessible to our community. Next slide. Magical Bridge Playground was just such an honor to be part of. This is another community-driven project. And my role wasn't that big. I was just supported where I could. It was largely driven by the community, as I mentioned, both the fundraising, the spirit behind it. But it was just such an honor to help in any way. And one of my fond memories during COVID, if there could be one during that rough time, was there was a lot of rules that came out from the health board saying there was so many restrictions on what could be open and how it could be opened. And one of the challenges was playgrounds, whether they should be opened at all because people were too close. How often could the play equipment be cleaned? It was really difficult. But there are like 30,000 kids a month that play at this playground. And just because of COVID, or even more because of COVID, they need a place like this. So the whole department got together and did the best they could to try to keep that place open. I'm really proud of that effort. We had people volunteering to spend the day out there to make sure the line was staggered the right width, and there was only, the allotted number of people could be in the playground. It was really challenging, and just a great way to help the community during that tough time. Next slide. Partnering with the community is another one of my favorites. This is an interesting one. These are the pollinator gardens. We've got 9 of them. And this is another one really spearheaded by a community champion, Juanita Salisbury, who's presented to our commission before to tell you a little bit about this. But on the picture on the left, you can see the before photo on the top and the after, where we took what was passive grass and turned it into a place filled with natural native species that our pollinators and other insects and birds also love. And same on the right, it was just ivy in that little turnout, and now it's some thriving native plants. And again, I just can't say enough good things about Juanita Salisbury and her whole team. She does all the fundraising, the outreach. She's just an incredible person, and we're so lucky to have her. Next slide. I ended with the photo of me in the uniform because when I became a Palo Alto Ranger, I swear it was the proudest day of my life. I was just over the moon. It felt like getting called up to the big leagues, you know, like I made it. I'm a park ranger. I get a badge. I get to be on this team. So I just wanted to say thanks. And I want to thank all the people that came out today. That was so kind of you. I can't thank you enough. The main thing I feel is what an honor and privilege it has been to serve the city. I feel grateful to the city staff. I feel grateful to our community. And I feel grateful to this commission. Your passion and dedication to your city just is so inspirational. And I'll take that with me forever. So thanks again.
Thank you, Darren, so much for sharing this with us. It's just one more gift you've given to the community and to us. It's wonderful to hear so much about your favorites. It's not surprising that you have so many favorites, and I think that's why you're a favorite of so many of us. And in return, that you've done so much for the community but for this commission. Working together with you for these years has just been a wonderful, rewarding experience. Your integrity, your passion, your creativity always shine through. Most of all, it's a pleasure to work with you, and I think you make everybody feel good, you make everybody feel better, and bring out the best in everyone. And I think when you consider what this community would be without you, it's a wonderful way to gauge your contribution, which it really can't put into words. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Vice Chair.
Yeah, I really appreciate you taking the time to go over your highlights, and not surprising, there are a million things in there I didn't know. And you're just a wealth of knowledge, and you have been for all of us. I get to be lucky in that I was 9 when you started with the city, so I got to personally benefit from your benefit. So, sorry, I'm not trying to make you feel old, but I just know that I'm going to tell my son, who's growing up in Palo Alto now, all of the things that you just shared with us, and make sure that he knows that your fingerprints and your dedication to the city are some of the things that make Palo Alto as special as it is. And many generations will benefit from your dedication to this city. And I just thank you with my whole heart.
Want to say anything? Nellis?
Sure. Hey, I just want to say congratulations on your retirement, and thanks for sharing your stories. Those are things I knew you were a ranger, but I didn't know the details and how far it went back. So thanks for sharing that. As you embark on this new chapter in your life, I want to extend my heartfelt gratitude for your unwavering support and guidance during our time together on at the Parks and Rec Commission. You've made it pretty easy for me to make a transition to the commission. I've learned a lot from you. It's made my job here pretty easy, I guess you could say. But I've really enjoyed your expertise and in procedures and processes has been invaluable. And like I said, I've learned a great deal from you. Best of luck, and perhaps your successful retirement can be a guiding light for me. I've been trying to do this for years and it hasn't worked for me. so I'm looking forward to hearing about your adventures in the days ahead, and we hope that you do keep in touch. I'm sure that you're going to be really missed, and we're going to try our best to continue. So thank you again for all you've done for the city, but also just knowing you in the last couple of years. So I really appreciate that.
My turn. I think that the animal you chose to highlight today is really interesting. It's a very common critter. It's very small. A lot of people might even step on it and not knowing they've done that. It's not endangered. It's just a little critter that's all around us. And you paid attention and thought that was an important species to show as a highlight for this community. And in the 10 or more years that I've had the pleasure to work with you as an advocate, an activist, and now on the commission, I noticed that you really pay attention not only to the big picture and the big issues, but you kind of drill down and see the people and you see the critters. And you see both, and the trees, everything and they're important to you. And I think that's really unique. And I really thank you from the bottom of my heart for the work you've done and for the pleasure of working with you on things, even 10 years ago. Some of the things you mentioned today in your highlights are things we worked on, and I'm proud of them too. So thank you.
So I'm the newest commissioner here, and I'm really grateful for how you helped me getting on board. And as I said earlier, we miss you already. So the story you told, it was very inspiring and compelling. So hopefully through that, you not only inspired people where you were at work, maybe you will find a way to engage with the city or city youth to mentor them to be the way you have served the community. And I really feel a big loss. We have the team, Kristen's here, and also hopefully your big shoe can have somebody will fill in that. Thank you.
Well, it's a very bittersweet evening as we say goodbye to you, Darren, and recognize really the tremendous work that you've done on behalf of all of us and behalf of the community. This is not my first time. This is my third term on the commission, finishing up next year, so it'll be a year. But Darren, you're really the main staff that I've always worked with, and you've always been there to answer questions and to provide a resource to my many questions. You've always been responsive, enthusiastic, provided a perspective, sometimes a different perspective, and you've always welcomed diverse views and in a very cheerful and very positive manner. I went back and looked at some of the memorable issues that we've worked on: the Parks Master Plan, the opening of Foothills Nature Preserve, the Starting Blocks Review at Rinconada. You probably don't even remember that. Fundraising opportunities, the Enjoy Catalog, pickleball, COVID, dog parks, pilot programs, Balon's tours, e-bikes, the skate park, middle school athletics, painting Cubberley track, cutting, ribbon cutting and history, and the list keeps going on and on and on. And I loved your slide presentation. I also looked and saw that since 2019, you and I had 910 emails back and forth. And I'm sure that each other of us other commissioners have had that many too. So thank you for all of that. But thank you for your service. Your work and your legacy will live on in Palo Alto for a really long time. So appreciate it, and we will miss you.
I'm not sure I have up to 900 emails, but for the little time that I've known you, I remember reaching out to you when I just joined the commission. Something that stood out for me was the fact that you were very humble and open to, share and also, walk me through the first few months of my being in the commission. Thank you for taking us down the memory lane and sharing those remarkable pictures. That's to show, I'm sure there are several other pictures you didn't show us tonight. That's just to say how remarkable you are as a person and also a great leader. And I just want to congratulate you on your retirement and also for the next chapter. We hope that you also keep in touch. I'm sure you have so much wisdom that we'll still glean and learn from. So to your next chapter and wishing you all the best. I'm hoping that, the person who's coming next will be able to fill that large shoe that you've left. There's an African proverb that says, even the best dancer has to retire from the stage sometime. I hope you don't go too far away from the stage so that we can also access you anytime we need to talk to you. Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you, everyone. We do have a few things for you, Darren. Uh, We have a certificate, just kind of formalizing what we've expressed now. We have some flowers for you. And we also have an extra surprise that we appreciate staff's assistance with. But Sure. So we've made plans to have a So Darren, we've made plans to have a tree planted at Foothills Nature Preserve in your honor. It'll be a site to be determined, although a likely possibility would be across from the interpretive center where we've recently lost some valley oaks. But we'll work with you to select a location, a tree species, a date to have it planted, and I really appreciate staff's assistance with this and of course our support. But it seems like a very fitting tribute to you that will remain present for all of us to see and will continue to grow with us. So thank you again on behalf of everyone for all of your contributions.
That is so kind. Thank you all so much. It means everything to me.
Why don't we take you want to take a photo? Kristen, yes. You want to come up and take a photo of this? Sure. And actually, why don't we take a short break from the meeting? Let's take a 5-minute break. And then we can take a photo and people can come say hello. Want to join us up here for a photo, Darren? Okay, thank you. We will get back to it now. Uh, Thank you again to Darren for everything. And we'll move on to the next item of business, which is a presentation from the Palo Alto History Association.
Hey, Chair, it's my pleasure to introduce the city historian, Steve Steger. Steve, thank you for being here.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay? I got that. Yeah, I'm going to run through a couple things I want to point out, and then I'm here to answer any questions on stuff that I didn't get to that you think I should. First, briefly, Palo Alto Historical Association, very similar to other historical associations in other communities throughout the country. It's a little bit different is we've been around for a long time. We're over 100 years old. We've had a historian on staff since certainly the 1920s. He, for many years, worked in the basement of the Carnegie Library, which was right here where City Hall is. And in 1958, he died in the earlier 50s. The archives moved to the main library, and then more recently, we're out in lovely Coverly. So one of the things is we manage the city-owned historical archives. We collect things, photographs, newspaper clippings, over 30,000 obituaries. That's very popular with people outside of Palo Alto who email us with trying to find some relative of theirs who was here. 16,000 photographs that are online at pahistory.org that you can look at and you can do most anything you want with them. But then we have other documents, maps, books, annual reports, city directories, and on Tuesdays from 4 to 8 and Thursdays from 1 to 5, either Darla Secor or myself are scheduled to be there to take on any question you've got and try to help you find the answer in our material or help you find it someplace else. We regularly help a lot of the people who are doing the architectural history of the old houses. These are hired staff, hired companies who come in and do that. But we also have individuals who are curious about their house and come in and do that. Almost any question's fair game, and we're welcome to do that. So the archives are there. The Historical Association manages the archives. We have a contract with the city through the library to staff it. I mean, so the money comes through to the city through the library budget. And it's been going on since, well, certainly the 1950s. We also do the other things that other historical associations do. We have monthly talks or bi-monthly talks on whatever topic seems to be of interest. I just gave a talk today to Fellowship Forum on Timothy Hopkins, the mystery man of the Mid-Peninsula. And these were elderly men who had no clue who he really was, because he is a mystery man, but it was a story worth telling. But we have talks at the Art Center on Sundays. This coming Sunday, the 3rd at 2 o'clock, there'll be the next talk on that in that regard. We put out a series of books. We did in the Centennial 1992. We did our Centennial book, which was the big book, fabulous book, but now it's getting a little out of date. We also do books on street names, books on Lucy Stern, and a number of topics. And we do the parks of Palo Alto. This is the 2nd edition, which I think was done in the late 90s. And we really need you guys and us. It needs a new edition. Some of the parks information is a little bit outdated. So if we ever want to talk about that, be happy to work with you on that. We have a gorilla at the archives. And the gorilla was rescued from Antonio's nut house on California Avenue. The gorilla was put into a truck and was going to be sent off to slavery in Oakland. At least that was the rumor. And one of our board members said, she ain't leaving. And he grabbed her, and she's now hanging out at the archives. I did not know she'd been there for 3 months before I found out that she was a she. But she will be going to the museum when that opens, hopefully in 2025. So we're at the Coverly in sort of a holding pattern. And finally, just in the last couple months, there has been great progress on the History Museum. The problems between the museum board, of which I'm a member, and the city, we're going over for years and years, but they've, for the most part, been resolved. And so Vance Brown is really going at it. They've done most of the heavy duty demolition, and we'll see great progress in the next year on that. So the two things of the History Museum, besides being a history museum, which could be what you think any local history museum, the archives will be on the second floor, so I'm excited about that. But you guys are all going to be excited about this one little room in the History Museum, and that's the bathroom to serve the park. From day one, the city insisted that we provide in our square footage a bathroom accessible to the outside, and it's not been a problem. The building it was a doctor's office, and there were abundance of bathrooms in the building. So there will be a building out behind the children's playground that will be available for all there.
And that's at Heritage with access at Heritage Park.
Yeah, the Ross building, oh, yeah, okay. The Ross building is the portion of that half block that isn't in the park. And it'll be on the back, on the playground side, will be this door leading into I don't know the particulars of whether it's a one-room bathroom or what, but it will be there for parents and their children on times of urgent need. That's mostly what I got. What type of questions?
Do you want to say a little bit more about the museum plans and?
Okay, sure. We've been working on this for 20 plus years. We've had professional designers look at it. We've had hired professional architects design the spaces. We're going to have 3 major exhibit rooms, and then the wing on the left side facing Homer will, unfortunately, has to maintain the little cubicles of the doctor's offices, but we can put other access places between them. So you'll have these little rooms, but this is what we're going to use to tell the little stories of Palo Alto. One of the stories, for instance, that a number of us are quite excited about is we have a man whose father belonged to one of the multicultural motorcycle gangs in Greater Palo Alto in the 50s and the 60s. And this man has his father's chopper. And it's quite, he showed us pictures, it's quite attractive. And there are people in the History Museum and others that, why do we want that? And there's others of us, including our Amanda Brown, who said, we got to have this. This is, you have to sell some sizzle with a museum. You can't make your history museum look like everybody else's. You have to have something that will get the people in the door. And just that would be one example. But then there's going to be the standard stories, the Silicon Valley, all of the high tech things, the schools, Eichler, and all of those stories will be told.
Could you talk a little bit about the Historical Association's role in naming parks and things like that, which plays into our next item?
The Historical Association, as part of the city's policies and procedures, has had a hand in naming all street names. And by my rough estimate, because I've been the historian for 38 years, I've had a hand in naming more streets than anybody other than Timothy Hopkins, who named the original ones back in the 1880s. So most of the street names that we name nowadays are cul-de-sacs out in condo complexes out on East Bay Shore or West Bay Shore. But we also do the street names. I was the city staff person, but I wasn't parks and with collecting the community's solicitations as to what Heritage Park was going to be named. And we got hundreds of names.
Steve, could you move the mic a little
Sure.
closer, please? Yeah, thanks.
We got hundreds of names. Everyone wanted to name it for their favorite doctor. And so we couldn't make that decision. So we went with the more generic Heritage Park, because then it can be for everybody.
And could you talk a little bit about the Historical Association? How many people is it?
Couple of hundred paying members, 2 staff members, a board of 15 or 16 volunteers. Yeah, I think we're not the biggest. We're far from being the smallest. We have a generous budget that allows us to do these publications when the need comes up. And the Centennial book was a big thing, and we had to raise a lot of money for that. But the books, whether it's this one or the Streets of Palo Alto, a new edition of that or something, we handle that as part of our ongoing budget.
And the staff members are part of, are city employees, or they're part of the
They're not city
association? Okay.
employees. I'm a retired city employee, but I work for the Historical Association, as does Darla.
That's what I thought. Thanks for clarifying.
Yes, yeah.
Other commissioners have questions?
I'm curious, with the historical museum has such a rich content. How do you guys work with, say, Palo Alto Youth Council, which is the Youth Council, to educate
yeah.
our youth of the rich history of Palo Alto?
We have, we have our own youth group. So I don't know how they're different from the official city one, who we talk to about the stories. Because I mean, that's one of the keys. You have to tell you have to tell something to your audience enough for that they don't just come in once and never come back. And if the kids have a positive experience, and that's why things like Harley Davidson shoppers might be the thing for some of them, we'll get them to come back and bring their friends. One of the things that I've learned, and maybe many of you have realized it over your time on the board, is most Palo Altans aren't from here.
Mm.
And so the history of 30, 40 years ago, 50, 60 years ago, you know, Eichlers and all that, it's ancient history or unknown to most Palo Altans. And certain people like the Eichler developments in town is a part of what made Palo Alto special.
Yeah, I totally agree, because there's a lot of new immigrants coming to this city, and then from 2020 census, 50% white, 50% people of color, and 37% is Asian Americans, majority new immigrants. So the rich history of Palo Alto is something they can be proud of as new residents. So I really enjoyed the environmental volunteers, the tour of nature walk. I actually signed up to experience that, and that's in the Enjoy catalog. And Commissioner Ochi and I are working on expanding the program. I'm wondering this can be one of the program can be put on the Enjoy catalog, like environmental volunteers.
Well, there's another organization in town, and there's a lot more, but there's one called Palo Alto Stanford Heritage, and they're interested in the physical presence of history, buildings, houses, and so forth. And they do a series of walking tours of both the Stanford campus and communities in Palo Alto. They did one just this last week on El Palo Alto. I mean, it's a historic California state historic landmark for this tree, and most people have no clue what it is, where it is. And so we're always trying to tell people these things.
Yeah, thank you. Very rich content. Thank you.
So you mentioned that you have a lot of photographs and like historic, do you know if there are any photographs of Palo Alto at night?
I'm sure there are some, but I don't know whether a
It
lot.
would be,
I mean, we have some with the helicopter flying around during medfly, Mediterranean fruit fly spraying back in was that the 80s? Well,
do you know when street lights started spreading? Is that like all the way to, I mean, you don't have to answer
I
here,
don't
but I'm
know
interested in
when they
that.
were installed.
Okay, the other,
But we basically accept every photograph that we can identify as being Palo Alto. There's nothing, we're not looking for only Ansel Adams quality images. We want the snapshots done by your neighbors down the street as well.
so do you tag them in a way that's easy to find things like, okay, I want to see what it
Well,
looks like
they're
at
all
night?
cataloged.
Yeah,
And so you go to the website and go to the photograph section and you can type in keywords. So you could type in the name of the street. You could type in perhaps a neighborhood. In some cases, you can type in an actual address. I had some friends visiting from Alberta, Canada the other day, and they were going to go see the HP garage. And I
yeah,
showed
but
them.
again, but I wouldn't be able to like say night and find the pictures from.
Yeah, I think
Night.
I'm the cataloger. I did a lot. I've cataloged several thousand of them, and other people have cataloged them. If you've got a view of the night sky or a helicopter spraying with medfly or something like that, you're going to say this photograph was a night view of Palo Alto. You're going to have the
Okay.
keyword night in there.
All right, I'll
And so
check
that-
it out.
Yes.
The other question I have is whether you also collect city documents like planning plans, general plans or other plans and environmental impact reports and things like that.
We do some of it. The library used to collect all of that stuff. And since we were in the main library, there was no reason for us to collect it as well. So now we collect the documents that have special historical significance to something. But all of the city things are all online through the city clerk's office, or they're supposed to be.
The recent ones.
Oh,
but-
yeah, well, the older ones, we certainly have a lot of those. I
Okay,
mean, I would say a good portion, maybe 5% of our collection is city documents of some sort.
okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
Ann, did you want to say something?
No, sorry. My light was just on.
Thank you so much for sharing. I really like to visit museums just because I have kids and, I would like to learn. And I know museums are seen as keepers of learning, culture, and history. I'm just curious to know if you keep a track on the number of visitors you have. And have you noticed any trends?
It's interesting. I've been doing this since 1984, and I just was a hashtag for, was it a visitor in person? Was it on the phone, email, or what? And 4 or 5 years ago, the board says we don't really need that anymore, so we don't do it. I always thought it was, we've never had to have it to justify our use, and maybe we should redo that, because I think it would be useful to some people who question whether what we're doing is. If you came to the archives, you'd see these people who come in. Some of them have no clue they have a clue what they're looking for. They don't know how they're going to find it, and we find it for them. Find the name of a grandparent who lived in Palo Alto in the 40s. We can do that with city directories. They come in, you want to know who lived in your house or when was your house built? We can't always tell you the exact date, but we can tell you, well, it appeared in the city directories beginning in 1936. And, John Smith or whoever was the first resident there. And then we have, again, 30,000 plus obituaries of people with a connection to Palo Alto. We have them filed alphabetically, and quite often the information gives you more information about who that person was, if that's what you're interested in. So I would, each of you, if you'd like, come by sometime when it's convenient for you, bring a question.
I have bags of questions.
Well, but yeah, we'll start with one and let us see, and judge how we do with finding the answer. And of course, there's sometimes there is no answer to the question. It's unknown, but we have tools to help you do that.
You answered one of my questions by saying you had some of the pictures online, which I think is amazing. So people can go back and, refer to pictures from the past. I also wanted to ask if you have regular programming.
Yeah.
Regular programming, like programs that,
Talks,
residents,
you mean, like, yeah, we do. We've gone, since COVID, we're down to like 4 a year, like every other month, but not in the summer. So an author and Roxy Rapp are talking this Sunday about a book that they've prepared. Stories of individuals in Palo Alto's history. We try to have talks on all sorts of topics.
I asked because I know there are a couple of celebrities who come from Palo Alto, and I wonder if it's something we could do to acknowledge them, celebrate them, have them come back sometime, and for those who are not residents here. And I also see it as an opportunity to also publicize the great work you're doing to residents who might not know too much about the History Museum.
Yeah. Well, again, if there was an opportunity that someone who was from Palo Alto was returning, we could, if we were notified, we could find out all sorts of, not top secret information, but things that you wouldn't normally know. We would know where they lived, where they went to school, because we have yearbooks from all the high schools and some of the junior highs.
I promise my last question for now. I wanted to ask, you have like documentaries, short clips of people who have lived here or events, major events or things like that? I know you mentioned pictures.
Yeah, well, okay, yeah, moving picture videos.
Steve, if you could talk closer to the mic.
I'm sorry.
You can bend it down towards you.
We film most of our programs, the program on Sunday afternoon. It takes a few days for him to edit it, clean it up, and then it's shown on one of the cable stations for a short, a number of programs, but then a copy goes into the archives, and there's a copy that's not a physical copy, but an electronic version that you can tap into. We're also we're working with the Children's Theater and taking a lot of their old plays. They filmed everything. Well, everything from the 1940s. And we're working with them and it's not a state agency, but some people who do video creations. And we're getting with grants from the state and others, we're getting those done. So they have a pretty good control over all of the children's theater productions from, the 30s on up. We haven't done it with Theater Works or any of the others yet. Okay, terrific. Thank you.
Steve, I just want to thank you very much for your steadfast dedication to history and Palo Alto's history for so many, 1984, right?
Yeah.
And you have always been the leader, the spokesperson, and the advocate. And it's really great to, especially to have you here tonight. So thank you very much for all you're doing and what's going to happen in the future.
hopefully the next couple of years will be really exciting.
Steve, could you just highlight a few of the interesting items that are included in the archives? You mentioned the gorilla. I know that you have a strong collection of all of the 4th of July chili cook-off T-shirts.
We have a collection of those. We have we have a nail and a shingle from the HP garage. Hewlett Packard, when they now own the building, and they renovated it and they gave souvenirs. Nice. You have one too? Yeah, we have one. So don't give yours to us. You only need one. Oh boy. I'd have to, I wasn't prepared to, there's a difference between the archives and the museum. And we're not competing. So we collect documents, archival material, so photographs, maps, books, and the museum is beginning to collect things. So they have in their collection, although it's sitting in my garden at the moment, a metal horse that was in Mitchell Park for many years and then was deemed to be unsafe. I'm looking, somebody said that they had to get rid of it. And so the sixth graders at one of the local schools protested, but they didn't get it. And so it was taken away and we have it. That's a big thing. We have milk bottles from some of the early dairies. There were dozens of dairies serving Greater Palo Alto in the 30s and 40s. Because these were, you milk cows by hand. And so a dairyman could only process so many cows per day. And so the herds weren't as big, but all the area out east of Middlefield prior to World War II, a lot of that was dairy land because it seasonally flooded. They would get a storm and a high tide or something, and the stuff was underwater. And if you had a farm with crops, you were in trouble. But if you had cows or pigs, it worked for same for them. You just moved, you knew the rain was coming, you moved them to higher ground for a day or two, and then you moved them back. Pierce Dairy was out there and others. So we have stuff from them. We have a bag that I'm telling you this is not our proudest moment, but a Palo Alto farmer in the late 1890s packaged Indian mound soil as fertilizer. And this was a well-known Palo Alto family. And it's obviously frowned upon today, but this was back what they did there. But we have one of his canvas sacks that he would sell to a home gardener or something to, make, because this stuff was garbage. It was, shells, plant material, and in some cases humans, but I don't know if we had too much of that. And you had these Indian mounds all around the Bay Area. And there were several in Palo Alto. And of course, there are none of them around anymore. That's the really old history.
Thank you. So you mentioned that the Parks of Palo Alto handbook could use a revision. How can we help with that? What's the process?
Well, you helped us with this one. I mean, we had one. In 96, and then this one was done in 2006. And so we made the decision that this needs to be updated. We got somebody, I don't, would have been you, I guess, but we got somebody from.
Darren, do you know anything about that?
I know I'd be glad to help
Yeah.
with a revised one, and I know the Friends of Palo Alto Parks would love it too.
Yeah.
And maybe we can even form an ad hoc and have the commission get involved too. But I'd come back and volunteer to help with that.
See, this is what. But then we would take the responsibility of getting it published.
When When the parks master plan was done, wasn't there like a large document that had all the parks with maps and everything with it?
Within the master plan, there
There
are,
was a companion to this document that had, no, it was
Oh.
huge. It was a big, like huge like had all the maps of all the parks and some description of each one of them.
yes, I do recall what you're saying. I think it was
My-
really a planning tool. It wasn't like a final product. It
Oh,
wasn't
okay.
incorporated in the adopted one. That's a little different from this
Yeah,
one, though.
this is intended to be, you would carry it in your purse or your backpack, or maybe in your glove compartment, except we don't know if we have
Mm.
glove compartments anymore. And when you travel and you visit a park that you've never been to, you would have some information. The same thing with our book on the street names. We haven't updated that,
Mhm. Okay.
but your successor will get a free copy. I talked to, as part of the city's new employee orientation, they give me a half an hour to give new employees a history lesson. And for having survived that half hour of history lesson, I give them one of our copies of our Streets of Palo Alto booklet. I probably should. Brought one for you guys. I didn't think of that.
Javad, I know we forgot to see if there were any members of the public that wanted to speak on this item. Just check on that briefly.
I've seen no hands raised, but if I do get any, I'll notify you.
Thank you. I guess a final question I have is, could you tell us more information about where you are at Cubberley and repeat
Yes.
your hours, a little public service
We're at
announcement here?
Coverly K7, which is out by the tennis courts. I'm there on Thursdays from 1 until 5, and Darla is there. Well, she just left 20 minutes ago. She's there on Tuesdays from 4 to 8. And if there's a reason why you need to get in at another time, we can arrange that. But those are the hours that we promise to be there for the public.
Great, thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, just piqued my interest. I'm going to be digging into as much information as I can. Did you say that a lot of this is on the website or?
Well, almost all of the images
Okay,
are on the website. So I used to say 15,000, but now they're telling me it's might be 16. I know it's someplace like that. They add them on a regular basis. So those are there.
and let's say, someone who's lived in Palo Alto, if I don't know, for a long, long time and have some
Okay.
historical information that might have been passed on to them, how do you go about collecting that information, or how do they?
Well, we sometimes we get material from the Friends of the Library.
Mm.
Who people donate their
Oh.
books and stuff, and they say this really belongs to you for you guys. We get people who say, just a week or two ago, some guy says, I've got all these old 3A maps that include Palo Alto. Would you like them? And I said, yes. An old one, they're updated every couple of years. And then a couple of days later, he says, turns out my wife wants to keep them. So we didn't get them, but we have things like that.
Thank
We
you.
have, the old topo maps and other things like that.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for sharing with us, Steve. I think you've piqued our interest. I think at least the people here, some of the people here will help increase some foot traffic and.
Well, and the other thing is we always welcome donations. If you have something that's historic, meaning it's at least 2 or 3 days old. Well, that's already historic. I mean, but something that you got that you think would be of interest to people 5 years from now, 50 years from now, 100 years from now, or way beyond. That's the type of stuff we would love to get our hands on. And
Actually, one more question I did mean to ask. As far as the plans for the History Museum, will this be a free admission, or will it be a?
yes, it's the city required it to be free. They may be able to get around it for some special exhibits or something. Because they're hoping to have one of the galleries be available for traveling exhibits that some of these national concern, well, for instance, even like the Smithsonian sends out smaller exhibits to museums throughout the country. There's no reason why we couldn't be a museum for them for Santa Clara County.
Thank you.
Steve, thank you so much for being here.
Okay.
Really appreciate it.
Next on our agenda is the park dedication of the Tower Well site.
Yes, sir. Good evening, Darren Anderson with the Community Services Department. Tonight, this is an action item, and this is to recommend that the City Council adopt a park dedication ordinance for the Tower Well site, a 0.19 acre parcel located at 201 Alma Street, and to approve the proposed name Tower Well Park. Just a reminder what the park dedication ordinance does. It reserves that land for park recreation and conservation purposes only. And I know I shared this last time, just in case we have viewers who aren't familiar with the site. This is the Tower Well site. It's again 0.19 acres located at the corner of Alma and Hawthorne. It's got the 79-foot high tower well and that adjoining building at the base. Also on the site are several park amenities. We've got the decomposed granite trail, the native landscaping, 2 park benches, an antique water pump display, and 6 interpretive signs, as well as an electric and fiber utility box. So a quick shot of the interpretive signs that are there, the decomposed granite pathway and the plants, the antique water display, and then that utility box in the back. On October 24th, the Park and Rec Commission discussed this topic. And in general, the commission was very supportive of the dedication of this site. However, there were a few questions. There was one question about what the cost would be associated if we were to dedicate this parkland. There really isn't a cost associated with the dedication process. However, there would certainly be a park sign if we were to dedicate it. It's fairly inexpensive, and I have existing budget for that sign, about $2,500. There was another question about how much do we spend for maintenance of this site? So this site is already maintained by a contract managed by the Community Services Department. It's about $7,000 a year, and that is to maintain the landscaping, occasionally clean the signs and park benches, pick up litter, and that kind of activity. As we discussed a little bit earlier, the next step was to work with Palo Alto Historical Association on naming the park. That's part of the city's naming policy, that the Palo Alto Historical Association would take the lead along with the appropriate city commission, in this case, of course, Parks and Rec. So on October 27th, the ad hoc and staff met with one of the city historians regarding potential names for the new park. The board for the association reviewed that, came back via the letter that was attached to your staff report with the name recommended being Tower Well Park. The board noted that the Tower Well is a significant historical landmark, and when it was constructed in 1910, the water tower was the first major visible infrastructure in the city's utilities, and is a symbol of the city's successful beginnings and forward-thinking leaders. The next step in the process, depending on what the commission decides to do today, would be to bring this to the city council approximately January, February. I believe this could go on consent. And Chair, that concludes the staff presentation.
Thank you, Darren. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak to this item? If so, please raise your hand via Zoom.
I'm seeing no hands raised on Zoom or in person.
Thank you. Then we can go ahead and proceed with commissioner comments and questions. Commissioner
Thank
Rocha.
you for sharing that. Thank you, Chair. I was just want to ask, was a hazard assessment done for that area?
On the historic structure itself.
Yes.
I know the facilities have looked at it and worked on it in the past. I don't know how recently it was done. I know that the base building associated with the tower immediately adjacent to it needs some restoration work, the roof in particular. Whether it's dedicated or not, city staff will end up working on that and have that roof fixed.
So I actually intentionally walked around the park after last meeting because it's in my neighborhood, 2 blocks from me. The park itself has very different kind of look and feel compared to the rest of our parks. And I'm wondering whether it's a budget issue, we can make it more. I think we talked a little bit about vegetation versus give it persona, and whether it's a budget issue, whether it is it in a part of planning process by naming it. And I haven't really thought through, I'm just seeking, put on the table, in the naming process, there's also a diversity of names, and whether we stick with the traditional name, or is there any, significant contributor to the history of Towerwell would be, say, like Johnson's Park, there's a name attached to it, whether that's taken into consideration too, and just threw out there.
Yeah, great questions. So the first question about money or funding to do any sort of rehabilitation or restoration, either for the landscaping or any other feature. It depends on the nature and the cost, like in scope that we might look at. So traditionally, if we were going to do a renovation like that, let's say maybe the signage is ready for a refresh too, and the landscaping is a little old. Our staff agrees with that. If it was a small enough project, let's say 25,000, 30,000 or less, we would use existing funds and probably our own staff to do it.
Okay.
We've done renovations in parks like that ourselves. We don't go through the capital project route if that were the case. Capital projects are usually $50,000 and above. So if there was, like, for example, it needed new irrigation system, in this particular case, it doesn't seem to be the case. But the landscaping could sure use it. But if it did rise to 50,000, we would probably prioritize it through a capital project. And the commission could weigh in on our capital projects at this very next meeting, December 19th. Staff will present the CIPs or capital improvement plan. So that will be one opportunity to discuss that. But right now, there aren't any renovation plans. There's no capital improvement plans in place. But that could certainly be a topic that the commission could suggest. What we would typically do is do a public outreach meeting, so the neighbors and other park advocates could come and share their thoughts, and we'd come back to the commission and discuss it. So that would be the route for that one. Your second question about the name, is there a historical name? One of those 6 interpretive signs at the Towerwell site right now does reference a gentleman that works, he worked in the utilities department, I think many years ago, and talked about his significant role that he played in general for utilities for Palo Alto. And I know that the Palo Alto Historical Association was aware of that and considered it, but I think they obviously found that Towerwell Park was the name that had been used most commonly to refer to that, and obviously recommended it.
Yeah, I have a just idea. I probably can send a photo, which I just showed Chair, about, I think actually inspired his idea, looking into a meditative space. It's probably under 5K, kind of small installation of a water fountain with sort of like a Zen-like looking thing. I can send you a photo of that. So I just feel that's the park compared to all the others, least have its personality since it's a water theme, and that might be something to consider. I can send you a photo, and the neighbors can discuss. I think that process probably will be interested to have the neighbors voting on it, to have some public comments, to see how to make it more interesting park. People actually visit instead of thinking this like ruin or deserted ruin. Most people think, never thought that's actually an actual park. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I know we had, you mentioned that there are no major financial concerns. Has there been I guess, an environmental study conducted on that particular property, or there was not anything there that would necessitate that?
Not that I'm aware of. I know it was in 2000 that those amenities were added, the pathway, the landscaping, irrigation, the seating, and the interpretive stuff, displays rather, but I don't know that there was any studies done. I think it was really just interest in the community to make it more park-like and usable for the neighborhood and make it more attractive. As I understand it, prior to that, it was a little rundown.
Okay, so the only potential, I guess, work that would be done there would be putting in additional landscaping with which
I mean,
might,
there are a lot of different opportunities. I think we would want to honor the historical nature of that site, and whatever improvements we might want to do would be respectful of that and consistent with that, would be my suggestion. That said, I think that landscaping is ready for a refresh. We can make it more attractive, maybe add trees in the right places to make it a little more shady, lots of different opportunities. But that would really be separate from the conversation on dedication. And it would be more along the lines of the commission just feels it's ready for a renovation, has some ideas, and then you would share that with staff. Staff would do a community meeting, we, work with the community to see what kind of interest they have, and then go from there.
okay, thank you.
Just following up, would you say while the site is ripe for, the landscaping is ready for a refresh, if this were not dedicated parkland, would this, how would that be considered? And I guess the Parks Recreation Commission would not have purview to recommend a refresh if it were not?
Well, we would certainly welcome any feedback from the commission, of course. Even though it's not a park site, CSD is taking care of that facility. So it would probably be a conversation between Community Services and Utilities Department. They were involved in that 2000 update. I don't know what other departments had participation. I'm imagining Parks likely did. I think that would be highly likely, but I don't know for sure. And we would play a part in that too. So whether it was dedicated or not, at some point we would do it. It might be slightly lower priority as we focus primarily on parks.
And I know there was a previous effort considering a historic landmark type status, and that did not end up being pursued when it was being considered, but that always remains a possibility for the future.
That's right.
Okay, I appreciate that the area is ripe for the landscape is ripe for a refresh, but it's kind of it's a reasonable start that's there. I think I think the general direction of things was tasteful, and I think as we consider a refresh down the line, I don't think we're talking about a start over and redo. I think we're talking about continuing along the path, and I think something like a Zen garden could fit well within the confines of the park. And appreciate staff's clarification that dedication is a separate consideration. But I think as we look to consider making this recommendation for park dedication to City Council, kind of an obvious question for City Council, I think, would be, well, what are your ideas for the future of this site? And so I think these ideas would be good to continue to share in the staff report that goes to City Council. If there are no further comments, I'll make a motion that we adopt, move forward with recommending dedication of this site as suggested by staff.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you.
Weren't we asked to also approve the name?
That is part of the recommendation. The name is implicit in the recommendation. So if we want to have discussion
No,
on the
I'm fine
name,
with it.
that would be that'd be,
No, I just thought it should be part of the motion.
so the motion's in front of us, including the proposed name Tower Well Park. I don't have anything further to speak to this motion. Nellis does the second.
Yeah, I don't either. I think I was there about 3 months ago. And, I really don't think there was a lot of work. I mean, it's very appealing. It didn't appear to need any work. I mean, it might in the future. So I think it's a good start on adding another park to our inventory.
And appreciate staff's assistance in helping them move forward with finding additional areas to dedicate as parkland. It's something that it's been an on and off effort since in my time on the commission, and I think it's something important for us to prioritize. Any other comments before we go to a vote?
Only that I think it's a really nice little park and it's a nice place to stop and it looks fun and there's a bench there and you can sit on it. So I think we should move ahead.
And I think the name is pretty appropriate, actually.
Good, thank you.
I just want to thank staff for their hard work on a fairly small park with a fairly straightforward name, and the amount of photos and background on this, and even signs for the neighbors to be aware of what was going on. Didn't miss a detail, so I appreciate that.
And it's also appreciated that we're moving forward with something that doesn't appear to be very controversial. With that said, Javad, could you proceed with a roll call vote?
Chair Greenfield,
Yes.
Vice Chair Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner Cribbs,
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman,
Yes.
Commissioner Kleinhaus,
Yes,
Commissioner Oche,
Yes, please.
Commissioner Way.
Yes.
Chair, that's a 7-0 vote.
Thank you. Okay, we'll now move forward with our next agenda item, which is an update on the review of the Park Master Plan, Chapter 4 and 5, Priorities and Implementation of Programs and Projects. This is an effort that's being led by the Master Plan Ad Hoc.
Just to confirm, I have the 1:43 attachment at 1:43 PM. Is that the correct? Okay, very good. I will share that right now.
Thank you.
Bear with me just 1 second.
Okay, thank you. So we're just going to provide a status update on where we are with this very large effort to review the master plan document, and the ad hoc committee is myself, Chair Greenfield, and Commissioner Kleinhaus. Next slide. We did talk about this at our work planning session. And this slide just provides an overview of the document. We asked you via email to review chapters 4 and 5 in preparation of this meeting. And we'll just be going over really our process for tackling this analysis and welcome any comments or feedback from the rest of the commission. Next slide. So again, chapters 4 and 5. Next slide. We went back to the work plan document to look at what the goals that were stated. It was really looking at the implementation process of the Parks Master Plan. So how we took the guiding document that's really an aspirational document and how that looks integrated into the day-to-day operations of the Community Services Department. I think hopefully everybody remembers that giant Excel spreadsheet with the different programs and projects listed from chapter 4. So another one of the ad hoc committee goals was to align the annual CIP process to integrate those specific action plan spreadsheet components into that process. Looking at the scope of work for the high level process for the comprehensive review. So any offshoots of this effort, so additional work plans or additional ad hocs or efforts that would need to be in coming year work plans. Understanding this is not necessarily a one-year effort or a one-time effort. So again, establishing periodic review process. Next slide. So we'll be going through these 3 sort of buckets. The first was to really review the master plan document itself and that accompanying action plan spreadsheet, and we'll go into how we tackled that. Then we'll review the prioritization process that we underwent and updating the status of each of those items in coordination with staff. And then next steps for how we will integrate this into the rest of the commission work plans. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, so action plan spreadsheet review. This was, it's a very long process going through each row of the spreadsheet, but really looking at each of those programs, and sometimes they're not even programs, they're projects or best practices listed in chapter 4, and getting information from staff to really assign an initial priority of high, medium, or low, and just as a starting point, so we know to look at the higher priority items and gather that information. Another background challenge to this was that obviously we have limited time with Darren, so trying to get as much download of his institutional knowledge was a part of our process. I'll go into a little bit more of the prioritization assignment in the next slide, but really looking at sort of ease of implementation, community support, perceived need, and this is spelled out specifically in the master plan document itself. We tried to collect implementation status, whether or not the projects or programs were completed, whether or not they were an ongoing one that does not have a start or end, one that was started and in progress, one that was started and on hold or not started. Any other additional status updates since the master plan was adopted, any change in conditions. And then for many of these, there is an existing ad hoc or liaison that would be associated with implementation. For example, Foothills would be an obvious one for some of those programs. We kept adding columns to our spreadsheet to collect other information as it became pertinent. So it's really sort of a good library or archive of information that we have on this planning document. For many of these, it has to do with parks, but the lead or co-lead may be another department or an organization outside of the city. Again, many of these worked more as best practices rather than specific programs. So it should be something that's really more integrated into how staff does the work rather than a specific work plan item. Obviously, we collected comments from the ad hoc as well as staff, and then unique challenges in implementation, maybe COVID, maybe something about the timing, just really capturing that information so we don't lose it. Next slide. Now I'll go through the definition of prioritization for the master plan. Next slide. So this is on pages 81, 82 of the master plan. And we sort of had our initial prioritization definition that I listed before, but this was really spelled out in the master plan to identify major projects to be the priority of the master plan. And I thought it was very well done and obviously vetted by the community, looking at the high priorities with criteria defined to fill existing gaps, respond to growth, address community preferences, maximize public resources, and realize multiple benefits. So many of the items in the master plan, while you would like to think that all of them would be high priority, they're not necessarily prioritized in that way because there may be other competing utilization of public resources, whether that's staff time or actual dollars, community preferences that are changing from the time the master plan was adopted, and then different gaps or different growth areas based on demand. And I know that's something that the Enjoy Catalog Recreation Opportunities is looking to integrate into their work as well. Next slide. And then chapter 5, really looking at these 3 buckets. So Chair Greenfield actually created sort of a dashboard of where these projects are and how many fall into each of these buckets of major projects needing further study and strategic funding, projects ready in the short term, and programs. And so just at a high level, showing where things are, with many on hold, in progress, ongoing, and then some status pending from another department. Looking at this as sort of at a glance of where these major projects and programs are, and this could be used in our future reporting on the master plan progress on a semi-regular basis. Next slide. What we wanted to do is take you through a couple examples of each of those buckets to show some of the work. And this is obviously not all of our columns that we added to the spreadsheet, but it does give a flavor of how we tackled the action plan spreadsheet. So one example of the major projects needing further study and strategic funding, we chose to identify and dedicate as parkland city controlled spaces. And this is not unlike the Tower Well site that we just discussed and took action on. And so using this as a high priority because it was fairly low hanging fruit and would so that would fall into the ease of implementation. Implementation status would be ongoing because it is an effort that has started and it's not really necessarily going to end because we'll always continue to identify and dedicate parkland. And then there was a status update provided by staff. And then we do have a specific ad hoc of the park dedication. So this is the information that we've been collecting. And then for this one, future work or future projects would be the responsibility of that park dedication ad hoc to implement this specific project from the master plan. Next slide. The next bucket is projects ready in the short term. The example we used is 1D1 on page 56 of the master plan, and this had to do with signage and wayfinding for the park system and connecting bike paths to parks and enhancing the experience of park visitors. This one ranked priority high, partly because of the need, hopefully that it would be easy to implement, and again, an ongoing program or project. Staff provided an update on the wayfinding efforts. There is an existing liaison through Safe Routes. And then part of the reason why this one was selected, and I think it's a good example of one of the many that it requires coordination with transportation staff. So while it is park related, it's not always purely the community services department staff implementing these projects. And so whether or not the timing of these are implemented as short-term, near-term, or long-term is not purely the responsibility or under the purview of the Parks and Recreation Commission ourselves. We're really sort of working with our partners on many of these. Next slide. And the last example is of a program, so it's more of an ongoing effort. We picked 4B6 on page 65 of the master plan, and this has to deal with expanding and increasing events that educate and promote native plants, species, and wildlife. Again, these are this was priority high. I promise they weren't all priority high. It just happens that we picked the high priority ones from the chapter 5. And again, an ongoing effort. This was another one where requires coordination with rangers and environmental partners. Really great status update on this one where there's a lot of successes that are highlighted. I think looking at a plan like this, it's easy to see what hasn't been done. This is one that has been implemented very well and continues to be implemented very well by staff. And so it highlights many of the successes that do exist from the master plan. While Foothills Liaison is not the only, Foothills is not the only location, it is one that is relevant to this. So we did note that there. And so these are just a couple examples. Obviously, there's many more rows that we completed and that still need to be completed, but this is a flavor of how we have been tackling this effort. And then next slide, we will continue to populate the spreadsheet and work with staff to collect status update, other challenges, and especially from other departments and community groups to make sure that we have that accurate information. And then the goal would be to bring back those master plan items, so each of those programs, projects, and align those with specific ad hoc and liaison roles that do exist, or identify maybe there should be an ad hoc or liaison that doesn't currently exist, but we really need that voice on the commission in order to support the implementation of some of these programs and projects, especially the high priority ones, either noted in the master plan or from the ad hoc's analysis of that. So that's our goal, is to continue working on this and bring back something to report to the specific ad hoc and liaisons in order to support work planning for next year and future years moving forward. And now I'll turn it over to my other ad hoc committee members to add anything I missed.
Thank you, Vice Chair, for the presentation and all your efforts on this. Straight up, this is a tough one. This is it's a lot to get our arms around. I think it's safe to say we hoped we'd be a little further along at this point than we are. There's been a number of factors that haven't helped, but progress is slow, and we do rely on staff for some of the effort to get status updates, and so we appreciate the input that the staff's been able to provide, and we did prioritize kind of working to tap into Darren's institutional knowledge while we had him at our disposal. And so Darren, thank you for your efforts on this. I think as Mandy mentioned, prioritization is difficult. In general, everything that's mentioned, that's listed in the master plan as a priority. If it weren't a priority, it wouldn't be listed. And so it's difficult to rate things as high, medium, or low. It's really kind of like high priority, medium high, and low high, and then it's depending on what resources are available and ease of implementation and things like that. It can dictate where things fall out. I think one of the interesting things we were working on is going through this list and assigning, identifying which ad hoc or liaison role is associated with a particular item. This is important for a few reasons. And we're also note that we intentionally didn't call out specifically an ad hoc or a liaison, but really more just to focus on what it is, because from year to year, there may be an ad hoc associated with something, and or not. There may be a liaison associated with it. So I think it's important to have the bucket there, and then based on our priorities and our work plan for a given year, would dictate whether it's an ad hoc or liaison responsibility. But by kind of carving things up into these buckets, we're able to compartmentalize better. And once we're finished with this, we can, as Vice Chair alluded, we can kind of have a list of things that can go to the Safe Routes Liaison or to the Foothills Liaison or et cetera. And I think in that way, we can get more direct focus on the items. For people who are serving this role, they have a list of specific things, the specific priorities that have been identified, and it's a starting as a start off point for each of us to start each year as we continue on the commission and identify what our priorities are to work on and what projects to focus on. It's important for us to take a look at the past and see what's been previously identified as a priority. Also, it's kind of helps with a bit of a gap analysis. You can see there's, for example, there's a number of items in the work plan that are associated with public art. And I think, given that, I think it'd be useful for us to consider adding a public art liaison in the future, who could be more proactively involved with things, liaise occasionally, develops a relationship with the Public Art Commission and work proactively to look at the items in our master plan to see how we can leverage the efforts of other groups. I think another similar one is a liaison associated with environmental programs. There's a lot of tasks that are associated with environmental programs that don't directly fall into a liaison or ad hoc role right now. I think another thing that we talked about chapter 4 and 5, but on the action plan spreadsheet, we did add references to specific chapter 5 major projects ready and programs. We identified them within the action plan list as associated with a particular project or program that's already identified as a clear priority and written up in the master plan. So I think that's a useful effort as well. Finally, next month we will be doing a CIP review, and we aren't as far along in terms of having a direct tie-in between using the action plan spreadsheet to help with our CIP review, but we'll get a start at it and to kind of tweak this in as we move forward in the following year as well. Johnny, would like to add anything? Questions, comments, the commission? I'd say one of the more important things we're trying to do as well is just share where we are with you. So we're not working too far along on our own, and get the commission feedback.
Just a quick observation. This is a really big job that has been taken on. And when we did the master plan, if I remember correctly, there were consultants involved in all of that. Is there money in the budget to do any of this, or is this just being taken on by the commission? Or do we know yet?
It's a good question. I'm not aware of any funds earmarked for assistance with this.
To update and do the reviews we're talking about, funding for that, or are you talking about project implementation?
In the future, not necessarily for this, but in the future, if
Primarily through the capital program, I think
I see.
the majority would happen that way, but it could also be through operating fund requests for a given program that we really want to highlight and push forward. The additional challenge would be that there's associated staff there and ready to implement it, but where those align and we have it, absolutely we can.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Alice?
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. It's, but I think as you guys have indicated, it's a lot of work that went into this, and there's a lot of work to be done. Some of the things that sort of popped, I like the fact that you mentioned that trying to tie in some of the items that are in the master plan, not some, but maybe all, and associate those with either an ad hoc or a liaison. And that makes, to me, makes good sense because rather than sort of revisiting it as you need to, if it was tied in with a particular ad hoc, it's something that you would be actively engaged on for whatever that period of time might be. And so, and a lot of this, reading through it, a lot of those things are already associated with an ad hoc or liaison. So it's just a matter of how do you, I guess, annotate it in such a way that it's reflected in the master plan itself.
Yeah, we'll be well served to not reinvent the wheel.
So I'm really impressed in the thought process and how you categorize each. And I love your presentation, wondering whether we should adopt that as a template, because we're contributing the recreation parts for the master plan. So you have one master presentation and we can follow you up. It's just the thinking process, really fun. It's very structured, well thought through, and we can all adopt using that as a template for our contribution to the master plan. And also I found it'll be interesting to see the next step as well, and to share the best practices you have put into redeveloping the master plan for our project ad hoc contributing to you. That's my comment.
Just one other observation that when you talk about status, the status update, I'm just wondering, can we be, I guess, more specific in that we're saying that, the project itself is ongoing? I mean, to what start point and to what end point? And maybe it can be, I don't know, within the next quarter or within the next, fiscal year or whatever it might be, but something more specific on as far as the status of the particular item itself.
That's a good comment. Ongoing is meant to indicate something that rather than a project that's been completed, there would be an expectation that there's aspects of it that are completed, but there's aspects of it that will continue. Related to one of the things Mandy mentioned was identifying items in the list which are really best practices, which kind of by nature are something that's going to be ongoing. It's something that would be kind of incorporated into a staff procedure or staff practice. There's a number of examples of these. I do appreciate that we could do, but we can look to see what other status we could use in addition to ongoing. And open to ideas and suggestions. But maybe this is more for something ongoing to, maybe we have a section that has completed status, which is kind of what the status is that we included in some of the examples. But maybe that moves into, maybe we have a separate column for work that's been completed and a column for other projects that are planned or pending.
We tried to have descriptions or to get descriptions from staff because they know where things are. But for ongoing, a lot of it is things like communicate with a certain department. So you do that all the time. It's not something that has, oh yeah, we did it this month, check next month. It's just ongoing. There's always the communication. Or if you think about, I don't know, plant trees, let's say, you do it all the time. You don't, I'm not saying this is in there. I'm just giving examples. So these are really not things that you can say, oh yeah, we did a third of it. It's things that really don't ever mean to end necessarily there. Some of them do. If it's like, if you say, and I'll give the dog park example, we're going to have 6 and we have 3, then you can say, okay, we accomplished 3. But a lot of these things really don't have a very distinct measuring point that you, so we need to think about how to make it a little more clear as to if there was something that's already done, but there are more.
Yeah, I think of it more from a project management perspective. Is it, a project has a start date and has an end date. So it's not something that goes on forever. So maybe we figure out a way that we can, I know there are components that will come out of that particular project that could be ongoing. But the project itself probably should have some kind of end date associated with it, or it's not necessarily a project, I guess.
Yeah, I think that last example about the native plantings was a good example of, I think, what you're looking for, in that it's an ongoing effort, but there are metrics that can be reported on how many events or occurrences have taken place since X date. There are many in here, and I literally just flipped it open to the chapter, and the first one I saw was encourage foundations to assist with soliciting sponsorships and grants. And we actually talked about this as a group because it's ongoing, it's a best practice. It's actually something that the foundations do themselves, not necessarily staff encouraging them actively. And so there are a lot of things in here like that where it really is a best practice. And so whether or not we can get reportable metrics on how many grants they've supported with, that could be a recommendation for a future phase. But I think that's a good point to where we can capture any sort of reporting metrics for ongoing efforts or even best practices. We can either get that from staff or flag it for future reporting in looking at this in the future.
I'll just give you some examples of some of the items that we flag as best practices. Select standardized furnishing pallets for durability, vandal resistance, and ease of repair. Coordinate with and or use other relevant city plans to ensure consistency with master plans and project plans. Continue to engage other relevant city departments and divisions in planning, design, programming. Periodically review and update the integrated pest management policy based on best available data and technology. There's a whole range of infrastructure type items, sustainability related, things like turning over the fleet to electric cars and things like that. Outside of core parks and recreation, important within the master plan. But so just helping to identify which ones these are. And a lot of it is low hanging fruit, and a lot of it's probably implemented in process already. But that gives you kind of a flavor of the outreach that's required within not just CSD staff, but other department staff to find out what the status of these things is.
I think there's also things that are hard to capture are evolution of things that were done in 2017, and this was published after years of work. Some of them have they morph over time, they evolve, and things come up that are not necessarily in there. We can push them in there. You can say, oh yeah, we can push the skate park into this specific, I don't know, CIP, but it's not envisioned in here. So, we have to look at both what's here and where, in a way, where it leads and accommodates things that, people want, the community wants, changing conditions. And so we haven't done that yet, and I'm not sure how we'll get there, but it's something that we do need to consider. Is everything that was envisioned in 2017 as important now as it was then? And are there things that are floating to the surface? Some of them were clear then, like the pickleball, it's in here and it happened and it's good. But other things, some change priorities, and that's something we'll at some point may want to discuss when we have a clearer picture of what's here and how it's implemented.
Could I just comment that I think that's a really good point, Commissioner Kleinhaus, about what we decided in 2017 may not be so important in 2022, 2025, or whatever. And so I'm thinking from a long-range perspective, what do we do in the master plan about the housing element that's coming to all the cities? And we do talk about the importance of parks within so many feet and yards and all of that, but how do we add something to the master plan about the housing that's coming? And all those people are going to need recreation facilities and housing and all of that. Even if it doesn't all come, people are still going to need that. So how do we handle that? That would be one comment. But then the other one is really, is there a column that we could use that could be for successes achieved to date? Because it's always nice to celebrate that you've done something, especially because this plan is such a big deal. Sorry about my back. So
It's fine. I was going to add to what you said. I was going to talk about that. And just to acknowledge the work that the ad hoc team has done, and also to add to what Commissioner Lennis also talked about. Commissioner Freeman also talked about project management, like tracking where we were, where we are now, and where we want to go. That will give us more a holistic picture of, if we're meeting our goals or what the expected outcome should be. Yeah.
Yeah, we have a lot more work to do.
Yeah.
In terms of the housing, I think what we need to look at is really what is planned. And then if we don't have enough parkland, then what can we do about that? And I don't think that we need to look at housing in any other, it just, people will come, people will need a lot, they'll use the existing facilities and they'll want more. So I don't know that that's our role at this time at all.
I wasn't necessarily talking about housing. I was talking about the effect of housing on what we were going to need to think about for the future. So it wasn't that the parks, that the plan should address housing. It was more, it should address what's going to happen because of the housing.
Yeah, but I don't think I think that's city council level, well, project level when things happen.
And I think from a policy level, that is in the plan in terms of identifying park opportunities, ensuring that everyone has access. And I think actually one of the ones you read, Chair Greenfield, about integrating with other plans, city plans. So that would be another plan that would be integrated in terms of the actual steps that staff takes in order to identify that parkland or how much of that resource is demanded there. That would be in sort of a future, to Commissioner Oche's point about where they'd want to be, that could be something that could be identified. But I do think the foundation of things like that are in the plan. It's just, I think the reality of that end goal is different now than it was in 2017. For is what I think you were trying to say.
Regarding the best practices, I think one thing that we can do is we can, as we sort things into different buckets, and the best practices is another column check mark. But we can look at all the best practices in various buckets and see how it could be helpful to just compile lists for best practices associated with transportation, best practices associated with infrastructure, et cetera, and compile a list and share these lists with outside departments. I mean, in the same way that we know that we don't wake up and read through the master plan every day, or even every day that we're working on Parks and Rec issues. We know that other people don't as well, and so this is a aspirational document, and part of moving forward on what we aspire to is keeping this in mind and in focus and prioritizing it. And so I think we coming up with lists to share with departments would be a good action to come out of some of this. Darren, does that sound helpful?
It does. I think it's a good idea.
I have a quick question. I'm just wondering if what the role of the community or residents will be based on the outcome of this. Are we going to get feedback from them, or how are we going to create more awareness when we decide to adopt any changes? Just wondering.
Well, certainly community input is welcome at any time. I don't think we knocked ourselves out with soliciting feedback this evening, but I think it's an early stage when I think it's more ideal this evening having an opportunity to talk about it as a commission. But as we move forward, we certainly will be seeking public feedback. I think we need to understand what changes we'd be looking to make and understand what the process for making changes would be as well. I think we can go a long way with the existing master plan and focusing on specific areas of it, which is by means of prioritization. And I think that most of the work that we're looking to prioritize is already in the master plan. I think the community continues to evolve. The landscape changes on multiple levels, but the goals and priorities that are established in the master plan, I think, will continue to support most of this change. And so rather than looking to change the master plan, which is intended to be a multi-decade document and require significant effort and going to city council to approve that, I think focusing on the interpretation of the master plan is going to be a more productive approach in general.
Yeah, just wondering, adding comments on that and echoing what Chair Greenfield just said. So it was quite interesting to see the youth council meeting last time, how they focused on youth mental health, and wonder, just thinking what Commissioner and Crip was saying about the change between now and 2017 after COVID, that may be something we look into, both the environmental emphasize for climate change, which creates a lot of climate anxieties, and post-COVID mental health wellness for Palo Alto youth, which has gone through some crisis in 2015, 2017. I wonder that be a part of the master plan, using park as a relaxing meditation, healing place for them.
I think Chair Granfield said, and I think what you are looking for is in here. It's just that we need to find whether there can be any kind of expanded programming for that, but I don't know whether there are or aren't. But the idea of, creating places where people can find refuge from stress, that's in there for sure.
Yeah, I agree. Just focus more on the youth wellness, which since the other ad hoc is related to that. So I thought I just want to highlight that.
Other comments? I guess we should check to see if there's any comment from the public on this.
I'm seeing no hands raised online or in person.
Thank you. Good to check. Darren, what are your What are your parting thoughts?
Well, really to acknowledge the ad hoc for just a great job working on this. It is really challenging. It's an enormous document packed with a lot of substance, and there's no other way around it than slowly work your way through. And staff will have to spend some time on this with you working on it. So I've talked to my staff about that. They understand it and are definitely willing to lend a hand and dig in. But really, the ad hoc has done the vast majority of the work. So big kudos to them.
No, thank you for your thoughts, and it's helpful to have fresh eyes on this since we can get a little cross-eyed looking at the spreadsheet, and we will add some more columns and keep going.
No, the feedback's been very good. I appreciate it. I think we got some good ideas from this. I think both the rec comments and kind of just having the discussion and inspiring other thoughts and other directions to go in. And
Could we just clarify how you want comments? I'm been worrying about the Brown Act and conversations. So just directly from an individual to you, to the ad hoc. Thank you.
no,
Or to staff.
no. I figured that
Which way is
I think it's actually something that would need to be shared at a meeting.
Oh, I was hearing you say if you had comments, to send them along. So,
Oh, sorry.
yeah. No, I just probably assumed that. So if we have comments or suggestions, it would go to Darren or it would come up at the next report meeting.
Yeah, the regular ad hoc report out period,
Okay.
and we'll try and
Great.
regularly report
Thank
on
you.
how far we're going.
Thank you.
Yeah. It'd be comments that would come during the section where we're heading to very soon. And thank you again to staff for all their assistance on this and for their future assistance on this. Easy for you to nod your head to that one. Okay, now that segues us to our ad hoc committees and liaison updates. Who has updates to share?
I have a very quick update. Maybe Commissioner Way, you can share on the Youth Council. I'll talk briefly about the recreation programs. Where we've started our journey to review the Enjoy catalog for 2023. And we're hoping to work with Kayla to be able to, check what the trends are and also come back to this commission in January with a presentation. Do you want to add anything, Commissioner Way?
Yeah, I think Commissioner Ouch did a great job, starts the spreadsheet already. We will try to follow, your act probably cannot be followed for the master plan. We try to look into the same kind of thinking process of adding the programs, possibly existing gap analysis versus and the resources existing we can leverage to enhance the recreation programs, which the current situations in Enjoy catalogs oversubscribed. So tag on that was the youth council visit. Yeah, we also decided we will divide and conquer, do alternative month. And so I visit last month, and Commissioner OJ will be, we just sent our calendar to the team, Adam and Christopher. So it was quite interesting to observe their in action. And I brought a mental health expert for Dr. Lee for actually doing her own program to enhance youth mental resilience, to do 10 minutes speaking. They were quite interested because it's along with their own program. One is this year's, one's youth mental health, the other is civic engagement. So next time visit probably will focus on civic engagement. It was also interesting to see how the youth very activated to use their own different skills, such as social media, to interview me as why youth mental health matters to you, and policy advocates on the side of things. And so if we keep doing that, also bring subject experts like Dr. Lee may be able to facilitate programs for the youth section for the Enjoy catalog. I'm hoping to integrate the two ad hocs and bring resources to that. So that's my update.
Others?
I guess I can talk about the bicycles. We looked at a lot of locations for parking in the Baylands and Rastradero. And we have more or less finished that work. We'll probably come back with recommended additional parking for bicycles soon at trailheads, mostly in the Baylands. At the Rastradero, it's a little more difficult because there is the main parking area and there's bike parking already there. We can add some, but the other places are a little remote and it's not likely that somebody will want to leave their bikes there. And so we basically thought that we'll focus on the larger parking area. And potentially, there's another one, potentially, we could put one or two stalls or whatever those racks, but it's still, it's a little remote and people don't like to leave electric or expensive bikes and walk. People do go there and bike, but leaving the bicycles and unattended is not likely there. For the other thing we looked at was trails at the Rastradero, where potentially could limit access. That was from City Council direction to look at Rastradero and see if there's some of the narrower trails that can limit access to bicycles in general and potentially horses. And we looked at that and talked to staff, and our general thought is no, there is no need to do that. People can continue to ride their bikes there. They continue to ride their horses there. There are a couple of trails that people kind of expand with a bike, and we think that could potentially be managed by staff, just by putting some rocks or whatever so people don't veer or kind of do shortcuts. But there is no real need to limit the access in general. So we're close to being done. We just need to put it together, and we still are waiting for some feedback from staff for a few things, but Darren and staff, all of them, they've been very helpful with this.
And have you done any outreach with Payback, the Pedestrian and Bike Advisory Committee?
I don't know, did you? We have not done that. If you want to discuss that, we can figure out how to do that before we come back to it.
Darren, do you have any advice on that?
So far, we've just focused on staff and the ad hoc. So we certainly we could reach out to transportation staff. They connect us with the appropriate people in Payback, and we could run it past them. We could definitely take care of that.
Okay, well, we can do that. Also from discussion with staff regarding the restrictions on electric bikes, there doesn't seem to be any problem. There's not a lot of people that are trying to ride their electric bikes on the trails. There doesn't seem to be conflict because there's no problem. So it seems to work well. Am I right about that, or is there any news?
No, that is correct.
Something I don't know
Yeah, that is
about.
correct.
Okay, thank you. So that's, Nellis, anything else?
No, that's pretty much everything we've talked about, and hopefully we'll be able to present something to the commission maybe in the February timeframe.
Thank you. Others? Darren, anything staff would like to add?
I don't have anything. Thank you, sir.
Just a few, the ad hoc for the recreation and wellness facility. I was working with the staff for the goal to have a community meeting in January on the 17th or the 18th, but questions remain about whether it will be in person or whether it will be by Zoom or where it will be, or if it could be a joint program. So we're not sure about that, but the goal would be to have it that week in January, and then follow by a report to the commission for the commission meeting in January. So more to come on that. In terms of racket sports, I think Darren talked last week or last month about extending the pilot program for pickleball and reviewing it in a couple of months from now. There is a question about Fletcher Middle School and whether or not we can move to pickleball lines on the courts there, which would be great because the other two middle schools have lines already. So that would be an important thing. There's a lot of youth playing pickleball now at the middle schools. And then we will be working with Adam on the outreach for, remember, the community joint tennis and pickleball community program or community committee that should start meeting or start being formed next January or February. Commissioner Wright, do you want to talk about grants or want me to talk about grants?
Yeah, why don't you take this start at the grants, because we had the community foundation.
We feel like we
meetings
spent a
follow-up.
lot of time doing this, and I'm not so sure we're making a lot of progress, but I think we said last time that we did choose 3 projects to share with the Silicon Valley Community Foundation about if we were to find money, which projects would we identify? So we gave them a couple of possibilities. One was the Interpretive Center at Foothill Preserve. The second one was the Buckeye Creek restoration. And the third one was the possibility of enhancing the bathrooms at the Magical Bridge and the pickleball courts in Mitchell Park. So we are finding out how much time it takes to write the grants and have the staff to follow them up and do reports on grants, but we continue to look for possibilities.
And is that something that you're close to having a presentation for the full commission?
I don't
or-
really think so. I mean, we
More just
have
status of-
developed a Google list and we know where some potential grants are, but I don't think so. Not yet. I wish we could, but
Yeah, I'm also curious, the consultant works with the city, whether we can get some information what they worked on, so there's
Mhm.
no duplication efforts as well. If they already have a concrete sheet, I don't, Darren, if you know the consultant who we hired for working for grants, whether they have a spreadsheet, we can take a look so we don't have to do duplication efforts.
Yeah, I had checked with Kristen, Director O'Kane, on this a little while back, and she had shared a little bit of feedback, which I think I passed on, but I didn't get a master spreadsheet from them. So I can ask again, see if it's there, but not that I know of yet.
Okay, thank you.
in addition, regarding funding, and this would be the funding, Palo Alto Recreation Foundation and the Friends of the Parks, who are working anxiously to see about the skateboard, the skate park and how that turns out. And also seeing if they can help with CalAv, with some of the activities on CalAv. It's a little tricky because it's not parkland, but if there were park-related things that could be done in California Avenue, then maybe there would be some funding for that. And our former commissioner, David Moss, is really doing a good job of communicating between us and Cal Avenue and the park, so that's good.
Great. Also related to items that Darren mentioned in his staff report is the work that the staff has completed in terms of moving forward with a plan for the turf replacement at El Camino Park. This is something that the playing fields ad hoc was involved with, but it's great news that we have a direction, we have a timeline, and we're moving forward in with updating our synthetic turf playing fields in a manner I think we can be confident about moving forward. So thank you to all the staff efforts on that. And again, that was the March through May timeframe for El Camino Park, and that July, August, September for Mayfield. And hopefully the sites won't be closed for 3 full months.
Mhm. One last thing that we don't really know much about is any progress with the first tee agreements between the golf course. and the
Actually, I
s-
did chat briefly with Lam on that, and
Good.
what he had indicated is that, because I was asking, where's the holdup? Is it on the city's end or First Tee? And he had indicated that it's really a lack of resources on their end. And so he had committed to trying to work that back into the queue. So hopefully we'll, at our next meeting, be able to provide a little bit more progress on that. So,
Thank you.
and it's kind of tagging in on the playing fields. Mark R has been, pronounce his last name, Rubio? Yeah, has really done a good job of, reaching out to the baseball community and working with them on, what their needs are. And he's, he copies me on all the emails, so I'm not getting any surprises, but he's done a really good job of just being proactive and staying ahead of that. So hopefully we can keep that moving forward.
Great. On the Hawthorns, the mid-pen open space planning, that's something I've continued to be active with. There's ongoing meetings with the public access working group. There's be on a site tour there again tomorrow, and working towards coming up with plans that will include what type of access, whether it's a pedestrian, bicycle, e-bicycle, horse, et cetera, and what type of trails to develop. And it's been productive. One of the main goals is related to trail interconnectivity with the Palo Alto open space areas, and that unfortunately that's kind of way down the line. That is not low-hanging fruit due to access issues. It's not so far as the crow flies, but there's some property rights issues that are in the way there, certainly. Anything else? Okay, then we'll move on to questions, comments, announcements, and future agenda. Does anyone have any comments or announcements before we move on to agenda?
I don't know how this fits into what we'll be, I guess, discussing in the future or inviting speakers, I know. But I was at the Children's Museum this weekend, which is constantly sold out, right? So I'm trying to get appointments there. It's just, a real challenge. And maybe, I don't know if that's something we can have a member of that group present to us about what some of the challenges are that they were faced with. I guess a lot of it has to do with resources, available resources, trying to manage schedules. Just talking with a couple of people there who've been there for like 25 years or longer. And, it's been that's been a highly successful jewel for the city. And so we want to figure out how can we also make sure that we're, as a commission, that we're providing support to them as well. So I'm hoping we can The other thing would be whether or not there's an opportunity to be a liaison for that particular group, but so that we are constantly making sure that we can provide them with whatever support they need.
Darren, could you talk a little bit about the Parks Rec Commission purview regarding the Junior Museum and Zoo?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's traditionally been outside of our purview. We could reread the exact scope of our purview and see if there is a little latitude. I mean, certainly when the JMZ was rebuilt, there was presentations and tour for the commission. So there's certainly a nexus. Of course, they're in Community Services Department, which is core to a lot of what the commission looks at. So maybe I could follow up with both JMZ staff and our director and do a little more research to see what level of involvement we could have that would still make sense and be in keeping. Is that fair?
Yeah, it sounds.
Okay.
You could lead with how can we help?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Mhm.
Yeah. Thank you.
Is the January meeting going to do aquatics and
I'm talking to your mic.
is the January meeting going to do aquatics and golf as typical, or we're going to move that back further?
We need to move on to talking about our agendas. Let's start with December.
Sure. For the December meeting, we've got the capital improvement plan presentation. So Lam Do, superintendent, will be presenting on that. He'll have met in advance of that presentation with the ad hoc from the Parks Master Plan to talk through that in more detail prior to the presentation. We had considered whether e-bike would be ready, and we're really close. However, if we're going to factor in, because this is December 19th, right? It's an early meeting. The staff reports and presentation materials due the week in advance. If we're going to incorporate Payback's feedback, it might not be ready, but we can try. And I'm glad to have some of the staff that have been working with you, supervising rangers in particular. Okay.
I'll be away.
Okay.
I can try to call in, but I prefer not to have the meeting.
Perhaps
not-
it's wiser to save that one for January, or if it's ready.
Yeah, is that okay with you if we do that January or February?
Well, we're thinking more like February.
I know that's what you said in the ad hoc report. But
Yeah.
and
February.
always happy to hear you say earlier.
Well,
Do we have anything else? So maybe to Ann's question, maybe we should look to see if we can get aquatics and golf in for December.
If we were to do golf, can we specifically ask about golf programs for the community for seniors and kids? And also the plans for replacing trees and doing whatever we need to do with Valley Water, along with just with the budget.
And I'm glad to check with both the staff in charge of golf and aquatics to see if that's something they can do.
So include an update on the status of the mitigations and if they can plant more trees and all of that. Yeah.
So would that be a separate agenda item from the golf update and programs?
Potentially. Yeah.
I mean, I think it'd be great to have them both at the same meeting.
Yeah.
It would be good to have all of the golf stuff at the same time.
Yes. And is there anything regarding first tee that
I'd be surprised if that would, the first tee and all the golf things we've just described would be ready for December 19th. I don't think that's likely. The staff person who'll be doing that will also be doing the capital project presentation and all the prep work for that. But I can certainly check.
Well-
Aquatics is the more likely candidate to be on the December agenda, but I'll check with both.
The other would be sort of what's happening with the State Water Board, monitoring of the wetlands. And then, I mean, Lon did give me somewhat of an update, but there's still some communications there as far as timelines and what, kind of where are we today?
Yeah.
And then the other was the removal of non-native weeds. And he had indicated that he's seeking the services of the Conservation Corps to help with that. And so part of that would be, the timeline and what specific services he's requesting the assistance with.
So Darren, you don't think that golf would be realistic?
I'll
likely?
check. I'll check and ask and push to see if it's feasible, but my hunch is not.
And is there anything else on the potential list?
That is all I've got for right now. And I'm glad to meet, or at least maybe one of my colleagues to meet with the chair and vice chair, do a little bit of agenda planning in advance to see if we've got some other options.
We should probably get on that next week since it's a short cycle.
So if I could interject, there's always dogs and there's always restrooms in different places. And I continue to wonder if somehow the commission could have a discussion, and I don't know where this is appropriate, between the kind of use of shared facilities between the school district and the city and Stanford as well. And that may not be possible to have that kind of a discussion, but it is something that I noticed in the master plan again. And I think trying to maximize the use of the resources that we have would be a good thing, but maybe it's not right for now.
I think like the master plan, it's aspirational. Certainly trying to pull this in for the December meeting, it seems like a tall ask. I think Darren, is this something that you think would be something that could happen as part of a staff report at some point in the future, or would it some sort of an ad hoc focus working with staff on this be required in the background? It's certainly a priority. There's a lot to be gained from this, but it's not straightforward.
Yeah, maybe both between the staff report, including discussions, potential connections on that issue, and an ad hoc forming to really focus in on maybe what the highest priorities could be for a partnership, a realistic partnership with BOSD. Of course, we partner with them in many, many ways, but enhancing what we've got to meet the needs that you described that are presented in the master plan. There probably are a lot of opportunities, and what I would suggest is maybe we really focus on the highest, most likely ones and see if we can get some success.
I guess something that could be a good starting point is a presentation to the commission on the current partnerships and successes. Things like the middle school, after school sports programs. But kind of outlining all of the work that's done in conjunction with each other right now. Obviously, the city management of the school playing fields, both the maintenance and the brokering.
Yeah, I think that would be really great if we could do that, to hear what it is we do right now currently And if there are possibilities in the future, especially around swimming pools and also around the use of tennis courts, trying to extend the hours by maybe putting porta potties on. I mean, there's a lot of things that can be done to take advantage of what we already have. And since I'm making all these suggestions about more work for everybody, could I also say that at some point in time, I would love to see us be able to hire a consultant to do a gender equity study of our programs for boys and girls in our sports programs facilities. And maybe that folds into the Enjoy ad hoc at some point, but I think it's really important to look at that. We may find out that we're just terrific at gender equity and there's no need to do anything further.
That'd be great.
I'll be done now. Sorry.
Darren, do you think Adam would be able to present something on current partnerships? It would be a good tie-in with the aquatics presentation next month, potentially.
Correct me, Chair, did I understand Adam to do partnerships with PUSD?
Just focusing, yeah, just kind of focusing on existing partnerships.
Yeah, it's fairly broad and not just limited to recreation or parks. I think it's much broader than that. But if you're okay with the narrower focus being recreation and parks, we could.
Yeah, as a starting point.
Yeah,
I think.
I'll ask. And are you looking for that on December, Chair?
If possible,
yeah,
potentially. I mean, if that were a review of the partnership at the parks and and then also the use of the areas, which include the middle school programs. And I don't know what else I don't know what I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that other areas within CSD partner with the school district in a myriad of different ways and different programs, classes and things that I don't know if I could have that ready for December, but I could do outreach to understand the basics of it. So maybe bullet pointed list.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, even if it's not a deep dive on some of the other things, if there were an overview, then we can talk about what would be interesting for us to learn more about in the future. And how we can specifically leverage that information to benefiting the community overall. Okay. Anything else from anyone? We still have a chance to get out of here before 10 o'clock. Thank you again to Darren for everything. The presentation this evening was fantastic. But just the sharing of yourself, it's contagious, and it breeds a lot of smiles for the community.
Well, I can't thank each of you enough. It meant so much to me, your outpouring of support and kindness. I'm at a loss of words other than a very sincere thank you.
Best wishes in the next steps of your journey. Look forward to hearing about it.
Yeah, love to hear your new ventures. Even if we cry buckets tonight.
And thank you for committing to the next revision of the parks.
I like that idea. I've kept those books by my side in my office for 15 years. And so I use them all the time. I have a master's in history and love it. So I'd be glad to help if they would want my assistance.
Sounds great. Thank you, everyone.
Well, we hope to see you
Thank
when you
you.
come back to plant the tree.